mental health really has got nothing to do with goals. Goals have no place in mental health, despite the fact that we go on about them and on about them and on about them interminably. In the world of therapy, in the world of mental health practitioners, goals are a downright obsession. We keep yapping on about goals, as if goals are some kind of magic talisman. Even the word goal in itself is enough to instill mental health, apparently. And yet this, when you look at it a little bit more deeply, which is always a good thing to look at things a little bit more deeply, turns out to be utter nonsense. And more than nonsense, it's an inversion of what really is the case. It's seeing everything backwards or upside down. We're flipping everything over when we make mental health all about goals, or when we imagine that goals are a great way to become mentally healthy. This is kind of a hard argument to put across in a way, because people are this is such a sacred subject that people tend to shut their minds immediately when you say something like this. As soon as they actually make out what you've said, which is that goals have nothing to do with mental health and have no role to play, the shutters come down. That's heresy. But having said that, it is still reasonably easy to make the argument, which is what I'm going to try to do in a shorter space of time as possible. So, from a psychological point of view, goals are a sickness. They're an illness, not a symptom of health. We might think a person who's brimming over with goals and, in addition, very importantly, has the belief that they can obtain these goals is a specimen manifesting the greatest possible mental health. That's what we imagine. What more could we ask for in life, after all? A person who has goals and strongly believes in them, and strongly believes in their ability to realize them. A person who has a strong sense of self-efficacy, in other words. What more could you want? What finer way of being mentally healthy could there be? But when we look into it a bit more deeply, we see that goals are a sign of mental ill health. They're a sign of grasping or craving. And what's more, it's not just that they're a sign that they are a grasping or a craving, but more crucially, they're a grasping or craving for something which isn't real and never can be real. Some kind of fantasy which we imagine will enrich our lives, because we imagine the way to enrich our lives is via fantasy, which is clearly, when you examine that a little bit more closely, that's a bit of a non-starter. So this thing about goals, it corresponds to the Buddhist idea, or the Buddhist phrase, which is the sickness of right and wrong. So according to this idea in Buddhism, we're plagued by this sickness of right and wrong. It doesn't actually kill us, but it makes us very miserable. Stops us enjoying life. And very clearly, right and wrong isn't too far away from goals. The whole point about a goal, very simply expressed, is that obtaining the goal is right and everything else is wrong, which is merely a restatement of how thought works. Thought works in black and white, in categories. Categories are polar things. They're made up of yes and no. Our mental categories represent the world to us in terms of little pixels of yes and no. And out of all these pixels put together comes our picture of the world. But ultimately, when you look right down to the finest level of resolution, it's all categories, and categories are yes and no. Because the only thing a category is ever going to tell you is it or isn't it? Is it a cat or is it not a cat? Is it an orange or is it not an orange? Did he do it or not? Did he not do it? Everything is binary when it comes to categories. A category is really, in its essence, if we could see it very clearly, a boundary. And what is a boundary? It's a made-up division with plus on the one side and negative on the other. It's made up because, in actual reality, plus and minus aren't two different things. They're just two ways of looking at the same thing. So boundaries are made up things and categories are made up things. But despite that, despite the artificiality of it all, we go around in life thinking that some things are right. And then when we are right, we kind of get permission to feel really good. Or if we don't get it right, if we get it wrong, then we equally have permission to feel really bad. So one way we're exalted, and isn't it great because I got it right, or this is the right thing, or I'm a right person, or I did the right thing, or thought the right thought. Or the flip side, I get to be down in the dumps because I'm wrong. And being wrong is a state without redemption. Wrong is wrong. How wrong is that? It's as wrong as anything. It's wrong as wrong. As wrong can be, and wrong is, it's a black and white thing, and the wrong is the black. And there's no good in it. Just like there's no good in failure, according to the conventional way of looking at things. A loser is a loser. You can't talk about the good side of being a loser, because the whole point of being a loser is that there is no good side of it. So goals partake in that whole polarity thing, that whole binary thing. And they're illusions. They are created by splitting the world up into right and wrong. Whereas the truth of the matter, as Vonnegut says, that it is all life, every bit of it. There's no bit of it that isn't life. And because it's all life, it's all equally okay. It's equally good. So there's no wrong bits. And that's a sickness to think that there is. And the reason it's a sickness is it would cause us unnecessary suffering and stop us from appreciating life for what it is, which is not a mental construct, which is not a game of win and lose. But we navigate our way through life thinking that there's the stuff to aim for and the stuff not to aim for, and if we happen to be failing to get where we're aiming at, then this is the pit, and it's not life in essence. We may not say that to ourselves. We may not say, oh, this isn't life, life's over there, I want to get over there, there's no life here. But that's what we're psychologically meaning when we talk about failure or getting it wrong. That isn't part of life. Life's over there, a bit over there, and the people over there, they're whooping it up because they're having a great time, because they're living, because they got it right, because they're winners, because they realized their goals. So they're having a great time. So life is synonymous with getting it right, with winning. And absolutely our whole impetus in Western civilization, whatever you want to call it, is in winning. And what we're really talking about then, if we were to analyse it, which we don't, is we want this idea, we want to live, and that's understandable enough. We want to live, but by making life something over there that we have to work hard at, the inevitable consequence of that is that where we are right now isn't life. It's kind of like a limbo. So we're floating around in a rotten old limbo, kept going by this hope that never dies, the hope that springs eternal, the hope that one day we'll win, and then we'll have life. So this is really a very sad irony. For the one point, it's sad because we consign ourselves to this dreadful limbo of not life, even though it really is life, but we've written it off, and we've written ourselves off, whether we know it or not. So that's one part of the irony. And the other part of the irony is this projection which we project on people when we think they are alive or they are successes, or that this projection we have for ourselves in the future when we think we might be able to get it right and achieve our goals. That isn't a real thing. It's a little fantasy we've got going. We imagine there's some great thing which is life, not realizing that this is life, and this is life just like everything's life, and we don't have to strive for life, because striving takes us away. Because what the hell are we striving for if everything's life and it's all life, as Kurt Vonnegut says? What are we striving for? What are we aiming for? What is this big? What is the big deal? What the hell do we think we're hoping to achieve? And most assuredly, we never do go down this kind of road of analysis. We really don't give a damn about analysis. It's almost like it's not in our makeup. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that another way of looking at what we mean by life or success or getting it right or being a goal achiever is that that means life for us, but also there's a kind of special qualification to that which we don't mention. And the reason it's a fantasy is that we're talking about life for the rational ego, or the self-concept, or the concrete identity. So we're really talking about a special type of validation for the rational ego. And we're calling that validation life because we think, yes, life is all about getting the rational ego super validated. That's what life is. What else could it be? When I'm going around down at heel, down at the mouth, the long face, living the life of the not validated rational ego, which we all know very well, and what a miserable pile of crap that is, but we know it very well, then we're running this fantasy that it is possible for that rational ego to get it right and have a wonderful life. And why wouldn't we run that fantasy? It seems obviously to be the case, even though we never think about it at all deeply. It still seems obviously to be perfectly feasible and legitimate to be thinking in that way. Very legitimate. But there's a problem, because our thinking isn't that great, really. It's actually stone stupid. And the reason it's stone stupid or stone dumb or plumb crazy or whatever way you want to put it is because there is no life for the rational ego, no matter which way it gets it. Whether it climbs to the top of the hill or falls down to the bottom, it's still not going to have a life. The rational ego isn't going to have a life, even if it succeeds at every single one of its competitions, even if it's got gold chains around its neck and multiple awards and trophies and honours and titles. You could load the rational ego down with all of that stuff, all of that great stuff, and give him a mansion to live in and a yacht and a private aeroplane or whatever crap. But there's still no life in it for the rational ego, because the rational ego can't live. It can't do that thing we call living, because it's an unreal thing. It doesn't exist. It's an idea. Ideas don't live. Ideas don't have a life. They might have an idea of a life. So the idea of me might have an idea that this idea is having a life, but it's not only is it very far from life, it doesn't exist. So that's as far away as you can get. So our losing and our winning, whether we succeed at our goals or fail at them, they're all fantasy of this ego construct that's trying to imagine that it can live and actually have a life. Like people say, get a life. But it's no good saying get a life to the rational ego. It's no good. It can't get a life. It just can't. And yet, this world we see around us is full of one activity, and one activity only, just about. And that is the rational ego trying to get a life for itself. And it sure puts a lot of energy into it, or rather we put a lot of energy into it when we imagine we are the rational ego. Lots and lots of effort, lots and lots of energy, lots and lots of activity. Trying to get a life. And sometimes we imagine that we have got a life. As John Berger says, there is this kind of thing going on whereby we can kind of pretend or make out that we've got a life and do this well enough so that other people envy us. They're looking at us and they're envying us because we've got a life. And then we can see them envying us. And then we think, hey, I must have something good because they're envying me. Therefore, we get to know that we do have something good, or we get to know that we do have a life because everyone else thinks we have a life, and that's the proof of it. So that's a very weird kind of way of convincing ourselves that we have a life, really. Kind of vicarious. It's not through our lived experience of life, but it's through other people's illusions that we have a life, that we derive the feeling that we have a life. And that's the best we can do, really. So if we are superstars or people who are highly regarded, celebrities, basically. Celebrities are people we think have a life, but the only life they have is a life we think they have, and they themselves partake in that life that we think they have, which I've just said, I know. But just to make the point that it's a sad state of affairs, and we can't have a life as a celebrity, or as, even just forgetting about celebrities, just as an ego, or a person that other people know to be a member of a group. We can't have a life, because it's the same thing. If I'm a member of a group, what's real for me is only real what is real for the group. And as soon as I stop partaking in that consensus reality, I disappear from the map. So I become nobody. I don't figure anymore. I'm not part of the big game we're playing. Which doesn't sound good, but what that means is I am actually having a life then. It's just not the theatre of life, it's the actuality of life rather than the theatre of life, so other people can't appreciate it, and I can't appreciate it through other people's appreciation. So having a life is an anonymous thing, really. And there's no glory in it. And there's no medals. So we don't win medals for having a life. Nobody knows about it. And so if I haven't got this validation and approval from everyone that I'm living in the right way, that I'm doing the thing, which translates as having a life, then that's death in a way. Collectively speaking, socially speaking, it's death. I've been exiled from the community, and that feels really bad. I've been cast out from the tribe. But the irony there is that that's actually me having a life, which has got nothing to do with winning. It's because I've given up trying to win that I have a life. Or it's because I don't care whether I'm winning or losing, or whether I'm right or I'm wrong, or I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing. So instead of talking about actually being alive, and instead of putting on a pretense of being alive, we could call that mental health. Because mental health isn't the state of pretending and then having our pretenses validated so we believe them and then become totally deceived. Obviously, that isn't mental health. Mental health is a state where we don't have to pretend. But we don't get to that state through going on about goals the whole time. So in terms of mental health, goals are the very devil. We've let the devil in through the back door, or the front door, I'm not sure which door. We've let the devil in now. We've invited him in. Goals are Satan himself, in the sense that Satan is a symbol for the deceiver who cheats us out of life by offering us promises of something. And because we're so taken by these promises, we turn our back on life itself, only to discover that the promises are nothing at all. And so that's the whole idea, really. That's why Satan is known as the deceiver. That's the whole game right there. He deceives us, and we betray ourselves, and we sell our souls for a mess of pottage. Even though that particular saying's a bit hard to relate to, since who knows what pottage is anymore, but it's just some kind of food, or I think maybe it's like a stew or something like that. But that's a very, very basic thing. And when we also think in terms of selling our soul, there's no need to get all metaphysical about it and imagine that there is this thing called the soul, which is so important. When we're falling under the influence of the deceiver, what we're doing is we're turning our back on our life as it actually is, for the sake of an illusion. We're gambling all our money on a horse that won't ever come in. And all of that comes back to this idea of the goal, because the goal is the horse we're putting all our money on. But it's a horse that ain't ever going to come in. It's a horse with no legs. It's a horse with no legs who is asleep. And it's a horse with no legs who is asleep and doesn't even exist anyway. So what are we doing putting every last bit of our money on it? Are we soft in the head or what? By putting all our money on this goal, we're forgetting about where we are right now, which is life. Because it's all life, all of it. It's all equally good, as Kurt Vonnegut says. Okay, thanks for watching.